Good morning. Today is April 2nd, 2026. It's 8:13 a.m. Incidentally, the video I did yesterday, I want to make a correction at the very end. I said happy soon eventual work towards making the private right-of-way into a public right-of-way once again. Yeah, I made the error of saying public right-of-way right at the end of that. Public-private, it's a confusing topic and one that the politicians love to put in your face without fully explaining, but that's something I've gone into in a lot of my videos and one of the prime points of what I'm trying to make, but those were covered in other videos. So this morning I want to talk about Klaus Schwab. The reason the elite, or they, are so powerful and continue to be powerful is they tell you what they're going to do, or what the situation is right out there in front of you at least one time, and this gives them power because the people, the audience, generally does not object to it in a sufficient numbers. Of course, I've objected to it most of my life, and so are those assembled in Arizona, not the state of Arizona Incorporated, but the unincorporated original state, Arizona state, and likewise all the 49 other states of the Union. We have reseated the government that we had prior to the War of 1812, and especially after prior to the War of Civil War, which was when the corporate powers fully took charge. Anyway, what Klaus Schwab is basically saying is, I own you, and do you object? When he says, you shall own nothing and be happy. That really bothered me and irritated me the first time I heard that. I did a video of it a couple years ago, Klaus Schwab saying that, and I've commented it on Klaus Schwab in the memory of, but I'm going to reiterate it because it's so important. They are taxing you on your property, making it very difficult to own property, to the point where they are hopefully, in their minds, making it more and more difficult, more and more red tape, costing you more and more to own property. Because if you don't own property, you are at the mercy of the elite and those who own the property. And that's getting back to public-private. The public right-of-ways were once owned by the public. They had access to them at ease and with low cost. Now, after over a century of scheming and being fraudsters, the central banksters basically own most property because you have given up your rights and accepted them as privileges. You have become a 14th Amendment citizen, which is a voluntary slave. When they freed the slaves at the end of the American Civil War, which actually never ended because it wasn't a full war, it was a mercenary war. But when they freed the slaves, they had to, the very next day, pass legislation that opened the door for voluntary slavery, which is what the 14th Amendment basically boils down to. And in legal speech, lawyer speech, that's what it says. Currently, there's talk about the 14th Amendment, and of course, they confuse the issue more than what I am saying here. A 14th Amendment is basically when you voluntarily become a slave. That is a constituent. A couple videos ago I covered what a constituent is. The one entitled, Who's the Fraudster? When you make a simple agreement to pay another's debts and sins. Now, the reason I'm talking about you shall own nothing and be happy is because you are not objecting to that in mass, in enough numbers. So that puts them, theys, into a winning position, a winning hand, because you all out there have not objected in sufficient numbers. Another important thing I want to point out in this video is the speech that the CEO of the United States Incorporated gave last night. It sounded to me as if he was bragging about how the corporation had won, or practically won, the war against the sovereign nation of Iran. After invading the nation and attempting to knock out its leadership. Well, the problem I see, and I was going to state it, that for the first time in history, the corporate powers are and soon will be lost the war. But they are going out, since they control most of or own and control most of the media, they are going to go out and brag about how they won the war. But then I realized, well, that's a repeat of what I had to face and deal with during the Vietnam War, which I had to participate because under threat of draft, I enlisted in the United States Air Force. And we, if my memory holes correctly, we lost that war. So it's a repeat this time. You listen to retired Colonel McCart. Well, can't think of it right now, but and Scott Ritter, they are giving the facts of what is happening in the war. Judge Napolitano has interviewed both of them extensively, and Scott Ritter has really made some great videos about that because he was such a part of Iran. Yeah, starting to ramble, kind of losing my train of thought. So when Klaus Schwab and Fauci and the Rothschild family and the Rockefellers make statements and you all don't object enough, that stands. It's just like whenever few times they state that the state of Arizona is a corporation, when Congress is sitting and nobody objects, that stands. Whether you want to admit it or not. So, if not enough of you come out of the state of Arizona and reseat a government by the people and for the people, or just merely come out of my people and make that a public record, you are still under contract with the Lori Lanes of the world. That's how it stands legally and lawfully. You are a constituent. You have agreed to pay all of Lori Lane's debts. And when you lose a war, that is in a sense a great debt. And if you continue to pledge allegiance to that corporation that has lost a war, well, I shouldn't have to tell you what that means. You are more than bankrupt. You are owned by the devil. And that's another thing I want to say, is when you are blackmailed, you are owned by he or she or it who is blackmailing you. And that's the way it is with CEO President Trump. He is owned by another, so therefore he is not free to be a leader in the sense that he may want to be. He has to be a leader of he who owns Trump. It's the same when you are bankrupted. You are owned by those who own the bonds. To that bankruptcy. There's a lot there that is behind ownership You shall own nothing and be happy. You will be happy because you don't have the headache of all the code compliances that must be met when you are owned. You don't own your children when you are a constituent. The corporation owns your children. The private school system that Rockefeller instituted, that publicly owned school system, owns your children. It's really that simple, legally and lawfully. However, lawfully, they have done it through fraud by not fully disclosing what you are contracting with the Lori Lanes of the world. So therefore, you can claim fraud and you can break that contract. You can revoke that contract. You can rescind that contract. You can rescind your 14th Amendment citizenship contract. If you listen to leaders such as myself and Anna von Reitz, rather than allowing the Lori Lanes of the world to be your leaders, to allow Klaus Schwabs of the world to be your leaders, to allow the Microsoft owner Bill Gates own you and the patents that he has taken out on those who have become part of his patented system. Yep, 17 minutes. I think that's enough for you today. Happy return to a public right-of-ways. Bye now.